Translation quality assurance implies all the steps that I have to make before the client confirms that they like the translation. Let's go through all these steps. Imagine that you have a source text of which you know nothing about. Translation quality assurance implies all the steps that you have to make before the client confirms that they like the translation. Let's go through all these steps. As you already know, first of all, we will need to classify the text, determining its subject matter, application, and container. This will allow us to clearly understand the requirements that will need to be set for the translation and the people who work on the job. Moreover, text classification gives us an idea of the risks involved and what can go wrong during the translation process. It's best to involve experienced linguists to get the best results from the text analysis. These people have worked on the texts of different subjects and in different formats and applications, which means that they understand the peculiarities of their translation. At Palex, we call such specialists our leading linguists. In other companies, they are called translation quality managers. For convenience purposes, in the future, I will use the term translation quality managers or quality managers when talking about these people. In any case, their task is to form the translation requirements and determine possible risks based on their experience in working with different types of texts. When we know the requirements and understand the risks, we can move on to the next step, which is setting up the translation workflow and choosing the best team for the job. These two tasks are closely related to each other. As we've seen in our past lectures, we can reach the necessary quality when we choose the correct set of steps. With that said, we shouldn't forget about the skills of the specific people working on the job. The strong sides of one member of the team must compensate for the weak ones of another. For example, if you have a translator who knows the subject matter well, doesn't make semantic mistakes, but has issues with grammar, then there's no reason to involve an editor to work after the translation is done. It would be more effective for a proofreader to work on the translation. We'll talk about the best way to build a good team for each specific job in another module. After the process was set up and the right team was chosen for the job, let's call it planning, there's a step that is often forgotten. This is the step of preparing for the translation. In this step, you start with preparing the bilingual files, which is usually done partially automatically with the help of a CAT tool. But for some file formats, you may need to involve localization engineers because they require quite a complex setup. As I have already mentioned, we won't get into the details of tools used in the translation process, so I won't stop here. Additionally, the translation preparation step involves getting references and supporting materials ready. The specifics of these will depend on the risks that we determined during the initial planning stage. If quality managers saw a lot of specific terminology in the text, it's best to prepare a glossary before starting the translation. If the text involves a lot of consistent phrases, like in one you see notice, warning and caution blocks, we should prepare specific instruction on how to deal with this. Finally, the translation preparation step should involve getting all the team members of the project acquainted with the client's instructions and any requirements. When small jobs are in question, it may be enough to just send an email with the instructions. On larger jobs, it may make sense to hold a kick-off meeting or even an educational seminar, testing all members of the team on how well they learned the requirements after the seminar is over. During the translation preparation stage, we are faced with the most important quality assurance principle. Any possible errors should be detected as early in the process as possible. Ideally, they should be prevented. It's much easier to prepare a glossary before starting a job than to try and correct inconsistencies in terminology in a typeset document. Before the document is typeset, an editor will just need to press a couple of keys to correct an error. After the document is typeset, the reviewer will have to write comment in the document. The typesetter will need to make the necessary changes. The quality control specialist makes sure that all the changes were made correctly, and then we would need to go through several other iterations, because someone will definitely make a mistake. After the preparation, the translation process itself begins. Project managers and coordinators will send out tasks to freelancers according to a preset schedule and control the deadlines. While the work is being completed, quality assessment may be carried out to ensure the translation is going according to the set quality standard. The goal of this is for the PM to identify any issues with the translation as early as possible. An intermediate quality assessment helps identify any such issues and correct the process in time. For example, if we see that the editor has to completely rewrite almost entire text, we should stop and think. What if we try another translator? Give someone a small fragment to translate and see. If they do a better job, the entire project can be redirected to them. This way, we can avoid many problems in the subsequent steps. When the translation is ready, we need to make sure that it meets the requirements that we set forth during the analysis step. This can be done in two ways. We can send the translation to the client and ask them if they like it. But there are two problems doing it this way. First, the client may be dissatisfied with the quality. Second, not all clients are ready to give feedback, especially if no one in their company speaks the language in question. In the first case, the project manager has to be prepared to make the necessary corrections based on the client's feedback. In the second, the client would need to have at hand proper reviews, budget, and time to double-check the translation agency's work. This is why it's so important for an agency to have a well-oiled machine of an internal quality assessment. Using independent experts help to ensure that all the processes are set up correctly and that the best team is chosen for the project. The main goal of the final quality assessment step is to create a feedback loop. Knowing which errors made it to the version of the translation that is delivered to the client, it is possible to understand what was done wrong during the planning stage. This helps correct the processes and the team, avoiding similar mistakes on the next job. If the translation agency establishes these mechanics, its employees can learn quickly and improve their processes. For the client, this means that their reviewers don't have to point to the attention of your linguists the same mistakes that keep popping up in the similar translations. Even if the first project is not all that successful in terms of translation quality, the agency quickly reaches the necessary quality level, learning from the old projects. As such, quality assurance is a set of steps that project managers take, starting from the source files and ending with the client's confirmation that the delivered translation is of the necessary quality. On the other hand, it's also a cyclic process that allows for improvement of the workflow based on old mistakes, making each new translation better than the one before.